Welcome to this presentation by Syntero on managing worry and anxiety. This presentation was created by Jordan Allen. So today what we're going to talk about is the difference between feeling anxious and having an anxiety disorder. We're going to look to recognize worry and anxiety in children, and then also develop strategies to support kids who are experiencing worry and anxiety. So the difference between having anxiety versus having an anxiety disorder, because they're not the same. Most of us have experienced anxiety, have felt anxious about something at some point, but having an anxiety disorder has several criteria in order to meet a diagnosis of having an anxiety disorder. And the National Alliance on Mental Illness reports that about 7% of people ages 3 through 17 have experienced anxiety-related issues each year. So every single year, about 7% of kids and teens experience problems relating to having anxiety. So some common examples of when a student or child might experience anxiety are if they have to get up and give a presentation in front of their class or speak in front of their peers, doing plays, recitals, sporting events, performing in front of people, being in a situation that they are aware that there are a lot of eyes on them, and then also meeting new people is something that can cause a feeling of anxiety in a lot of kids and teens. So experiencing a feeling of anxiety isn't necessarily a negative thing. It can be motivating. Feeling a little bit of anxiety may motivate a child to maybe practice or rehearse for an upcoming performance, or feeling nervous or anxious about a test may motivate a child to maybe study more, make sure that they're really prepared for that test. However, having a continuous feeling of intense distress is when an anxiety disorder may develop, and this is something that should be explored by a mental health professional. So there are some different thoughts about where anxiety may come from. One of them that is a possibility is through genes. So research shows that when there's a higher amount of anxiety in a family, a student or child is more likely to experience anxiety. So this could be through a genetic link. This could be through modeling or reactions by a parent. So this is something that if a parent tends to be anxious or tends to be nervous, they may inadvertently pass on that feeling of being on edge or being anxious when something happens to a child, even unintentionally, maybe even without realizing it, that their reaction may cause an anxious reaction in a child. Other things could be negative thoughts. Avoiding things that cause anxiety can actually lead to more anxiety, because then that child or student never develops or never has the opportunity to learn that they are able to handle the things that cause them anxiety. And then also stressors, so just actual things that could cause stress or anxiety or nervousness in the child's environment. So some symptoms of anxiety, of feeling anxiety, are persistent or excessive worry, nervousness, restlessness or fidgeting, irritability, having difficulty concentrating, avoidant behavior, so again, avoiding the thing that makes the child feel anxious, and then somatic complaints or physical problems, which we'll talk about here in a second. In younger kids, so especially younger elementary, they're not able to verbalize what they're feeling or articulate their feelings. And so oftentimes their anxiety is going to come out in a physical symptom. So things like headaches, nausea, an upset stomach, increased heart rate, or just kind of having that feeling of being on edge, bowel problems, diarrhea, constipation, a sleep disturbance, increased illness, maybe they are getting sick frequently, having tight muscles, a change in appetite, so either feeling more hungry regularly or less, and then fatigue or exhaustion. All could be some of those physical symptoms or somatic symptoms that we might see with younger kids, even if they're not able to express with words that they're feeling anxious or feeling nervous, that may give us an indication of how they are feeling. So what can we as parents, caregivers, people who interact with a child do to help? So we want to help kids learn to regulate their emotions. So they could be taking regulation breaks. So this could be a mindful break or a calming break, which is a way that helps the child, anything that helps them calm down and focus on the present moment and what's currently happening. And we'll talk a little bit later, some examples of how to do that. Or a movement break, so something that gives the child an opportunity to get up and move around, maybe burn off some energy. Another way of regulating emotions is getting both sides of the brain talking to each other. So going for a walk, rhythmic tapping, so this would be if a child maybe gives themselves a hug and then taps their right hand on their shoulder and then their left hand on their shoulder, and would alternate that. And what this does is this helps the brain, helps both sides of the brain kind of come back in unison rather than being disjointed. One final thing just to help students develop emotional regulation is thinking of a time when someone was dysregulated or was having problems because of feeling very nervous or anxious. Were you able to help them? And then maybe what did you do that was helpful? What did they do on their own to help themselves cope with that situation? And then also asking yourself, how did you cope with that situation? Again, we talked about when adults maybe are reacting in a nervous or anxious way, that could spur a child to also react or respond in a nervous or anxious way. So also kind of checking yourself and asking, when I was trying to help this student calm down, was I maybe getting anxious during that, or was I able to cope and handle my emotions as well? Something you may say to a child or a teen that may be helpful is to say, I know you're sad, or in this case, maybe I know you're nervous or anxious, so I won't tell you to have a good day. Instead, I will advise you simply to have a day. Stay alive, feed yourself well, wear comfortable clothes, and don't give up on yourself just yet. It will get better, but until then, have a day. Understanding feelings, both for adults and students, is to help kids and teens identify their feelings. So giving them words if they maybe don't have the words to describe how they're feeling, maybe presenting suggestions, saying something like, I wonder if you're feeling nervous about this upcoming event. Also developing a feelings chart, and there are many examples online that you can find of feelings charts to help. You can get ones that are really colorful and fun. You can get ones that have emoji faces that are good for younger kids to help them identify how they're feeling and be able to use their words to tell you what it is they're feeling. Also, validating the child's feelings is very important. So saying something like, I can understand why you feel that way, or it makes sense to feel the way you're feeling, or maybe to respond the way that you are. Children sometimes have multiple emotions and contradictory emotions. So for example, a kid may say, well, I'm proud of myself for being honest and telling the truth, but I also am feeling sad because I think it hurt someone's feelings. And this is something that often is difficult for kids to navigate when they're feeling two contradictory emotions. So again, validating that and explaining to them that makes sense, that you're feeling both of those things at the same time, and letting them know that's okay and it's acceptable for them to feel the way that they feel, even if their feelings don't always make sense or seem to contradict each other. Also consider the message that kids often hear, that some feelings aren't acceptable. So sometimes kids will hear things like, don't be angry, don't get upset, there's nothing to cry about, you don't need to be sad. So this is a way of that would be invalidating that kid's emotions. So just being careful about that kind of language and avoiding anything that would suggest that their feelings aren't okay or aren't acceptable. Developing a connection with a child is one of the best ways that an adult or a parent or a caregiver can support them when they're feeling anxious or nervous. So having close relational ties can lead to having a solid sense of security and can produce strong values. And this leads to prevention from children of seeking destructive alternatives. So having this close relationship or close connection with a safe, healthy, trusted adult can help kids learn and use positive coping skills rather than destructive ones. So some ways to develop that connection with a kid is to allow and normalize all emotions. So like we just talked about, not saying that some emotions are acceptable and some aren't allowed, but instead saying that all feelings are okay. But maybe how you react to them and how you handle those emotions is maybe where the child needs to learn and grow. Creating space for connection, so physical space and also mental space for the child to be able to connect with a safe and healthy adult. Directly address any kind of conflict that comes up. So if there is a conflict or a disagreement between an adult and a child, not ignoring that or avoiding that, but addressing it directly in order to resolve it. And then also encourage pride in an ethnic, religious, or cultural group can be very helpful for a child or teen as a resource to them. And so encouraging, as an adult who's supporting them, encouraging having pride in those different groups that they may be a part of is another way to develop a connection with a child. Something else that also is really helpful and important is to help a child develop control and develop a sense of control. So helping them realize that they can control the outcomes of their decisions and actions. And when they're able to realize that, they're more likely to know that they have the ability to do what it takes and that they can bounce back from mistakes. So we want to help children learn and grow through their mistakes rather than being afraid that they will mess up or that they'll fail. So children who feel that everything always happens to me, so feel like they're a victim, they become passive, pessimistic, and depressed because they lack this feeling and this confidence that they have the ability to control their environment or to control anything in their world. So as adults, we want to encourage and recognize small accomplishments and, again, help them learn how they can grow from their mistakes. We want to consider using discipline instead of punishment. Use daily responsibilities to build confidence and control. So giving kids and teens some responsibilities, whether that's at home or in a classroom, some responsibilities during the day to help them build their self-confidence and increase their sense that they are able to do things. And then we also want to help them understand the circles of control, which we are going to look at here in a minute. We also want to provide choices to help them feel like they have control. So a few choices can help children have a sense of control. But on the flip side, having too many choices could lead to anxiety if it's overwhelming to a child because there are so many options that they can't really sort through them. So having some choices and options of maybe responsibilities or chores or different things in their life helps give kids a sense of control that they can impact their environment rather than everything always happening to them. So this is an image of kind of a way of talking about or explaining to kids circle of control. So that circle on the left are things I can control. So these would be things like my behavior, my effort, my thoughts, my attitude, my choices, my actions, my words, what I say, how I respond to things that happen. And on the right side are things that I cannot control. So this would be what other people say or other people's actions or what they do, their thoughts or maybe how they respond or how they react to something that's going on. And so kind of just going through this exercise with kids and teens is something that can be really helpful to help them see and visualize what things are inside their control and what things are outside their control and are someone else's responsibility. Talking about coping, and we are going to talk about a few different strategies to help kids cope with stress or anxiety. The best protection against unsafe or worrisome behaviors is having a wide variety of positive and adaptive coping strategies. So allow imaginative problem solving, allow kids and teens to come up with new or innovative ideas of how to solve problems going on. And then also support them and provide reassurance that making mistakes is okay and is part of the learning process. As an adult or a caregiver listening to a child, engage in active listening. So really seeking to listen and hear and understand what a child is saying as opposed to having an impulsive response. So that would be reacting, as an adult, reacting without thinking, maybe to something a child says or does. Also modeling healthy coping skills and stress management skills. So exploring and clarifying your own feelings, thinking positively and having positive appraisal or a positive outlook on what's going on, and also rational thinking rather than emotional thinking. Demonstrating and modeling these things are ways to help kids learn to do this on their own. A few skills to use and to teach kids to help develop healthy coping skills are deep breathing. And there are lots of techniques and strategies that you can find online, even just on YouTube by looking up deep breathing. There are lots of videos there that'll kind of walk you through just different techniques and different ways of practicing deep breathing. And a lot of them can be really fun for kids. Rhythmic tapping, which we discussed before. Identifying the 5 senses to ground you in the moment. So thinking of something you can see, something you can hear, feel, smell, taste. These are ways to help kids and teens kind of bring their focus back to what's going on in the present moment, maybe as opposed to all of the maybe different stressors or things that are causing them anxiety. Some positive self-talk, so encouraging positive thoughts and positive things to say about themselves and remind themselves, focusing on their strengths and their skills rather than mistakes and weaknesses. Mindful eating, again, is another way to use the 5 senses to kind of focus on the present moment. Progressive muscle relaxation, again, this is a strategy of tensing and relaxing different muscle groups in the body. And again, there are lots of videos available online that can kind of walk kids through how to do progressive muscle relaxation. Also, getting outside, going on a walk around the house, around the building, maybe around the neighborhood, is something that can help kids to calm down or focus on the present moment. And here are just a few graphics to help explain some of those things we talked about. So on the left is 5-finger breathing. So it's just a way of practicing a deep breathing exercise. On the right at the top is the Lazy 8, which is another breathing exercise that helps kids as they kind of trace that symbol, focus a breathing exercise. And then also on the right, on the bottom, is 2 more ways of practicing breathing. So thinking of taking in a deep breath as if you're smelling a flower, and then exhaling that deep breath as if you're blowing out a candle. It's just a way to focus breathing in order to kind of bring the child back to the present moment and help them calm down. Here's a list of some free apps that kids and teens can use to help manage stress and anxiety. So these are all available that a kid or a teen who has a cell phone or a smartphone could download these to continue to practice these things on their own. That is the end of our presentation. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please look for information to fill out a Q&A or to get in contact with a Syntero clinician. Thank you so much.